Honourable youth members, it is a pleasure to be here in my role as Speaker for your Youth Parliament and to welcome you as youth members. It is a privilege to be a Member of Parliament because members represent all those who live in their electorates, our Queensland communities. Parliament is more than the government. Our Parliament includes the Premier, the Cabinet Ministers, the government backbenchers, the shadow cabinet, the opposition backbenchers, members who represent minor parties, and independent members. All these groups and individuals come together to speak about important matters for all Queenslanders and to make laws that shape our society. Think about the ideas that you're going to be debating today and how the proposed changes could affect something as important as how we travel to school and to work, and also how we use 21st century technology to learn. These ideas really could have a big impact. The work done by Parliament affects all Queenslanders, and this is why members will be in touch with people they're representing and they listen to their views. I thank the members of the Queensland Parliament who are in attendance today from the local region. Stephen Bennett, the member for Burnett, and Bryson Head, the member for Callan. Welcome, gentlemen. I thank them very much for being here. I'm sure they look forward to being in the chair and listening to your contributions, as do I. It is great to see so many schools participating in this Youth Parliament. I would like to welcome students from Borrowan State School, especially Tobin. Thank you for that excellent walk-in today. Students from Boyne Island State School, Discovery Christian College, Gingin State School, Kinkora State School, and Tarangabar State School. These are the schools make up the government on my right. I'd also like to welcome the schools that are making up the very important opposition on my left. The Burnaby State School, the Calliope State School, Childers State School, Gladstone Youth State School, Monto State School, and St John the Baptist State School. Students, during this Youth Parliament, be sure to encourage your fellow members with a hear hear when they finish their speeches. There's no applause in Parliament, but saying hear hear is the way you can show your agreement and respect. I declare this Youth Parliament open. I call the Youth Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very honoured to be here today with all of you celebrating Queensland and what a great state it is. Queensland is a great state because we have 5 of Australia's 11 World Natural Heritage Areas. These include the Scenic Rim National Parks, K'gari, formerly Fraser Island, Riverslade Fossil Fields, the wet tropics including Daintree National Park, and one of the wonders of the world, the Great Barrier Reef. Queensland is also the ultimate holiday destination with over 20 million people visiting Queensland each year. These tourist attractions are bringing more population to the community, so we need to take care of them. But here in Queensland, there's always room for improvement. While Queensland has some of the best hospitals with expert workers and top-of-the-range facilities, the Queensland Government needs to commit to improving our medical services and paramedics, especially in the rural and remote areas of central Queensland. People in the rural and remote areas face a range of stresses unique to living outside major cities. These include a greater prevalence of some chronic conditions and disability, and generally poorer health. Whether you live in a huge city or in the middle of central Queensland, we all deserve access to efficient medical services. This is my core vision for Queensland, that every person has the access to the basic medical services, so that no longer will babies have to be born on the way to hospital, and no longer shall we have to drive for several hours just for people to get a cancer treatment. If these issues are addressed, we would see a positive increase in people's health, both physically and mentally across all Queensland, but especially in rural areas. In conclusion, I propose more funds to be allocated to rural and remote areas of Queensland for medical services, and to make studying in the medical field more affordable to attract more people into the medical sector. Thank you for your time and listening to my vision for Queensland.
I call the Youth Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to share with the House my vision for Queensland. A Queensland where everyone can feel healthy, protected and happy. Mr. Speaker, to make this possible, we need to change some aspects in our local communities. We need to upgrade our hospital systems, protect our youth from social media apps, and control the rise and use of artificial intelligence. Mr. Speaker, our local hospitals are understaffed and are due for an upgrade. More and more people are moving to this great state and adding even more pressure on our health system. We need to encourage the younger generation to make careers in medicine, nursing and allied health services. We require more hospital beds, medical equipment and paramedics to first respond to the needs of our growing population so we can all enjoy the natural beauty of our state. Mr. Speaker, we need to protect our children from social media apps. Popular apps like TikTok should have age restrictions that ban children using the app, just like they do in Singapore where the company is located. Even though it is very popular with the younger generations, apps like this are exposing children to behaviours that are against social norms, such as using bad language, vaping, drinking and other illegal activities. We have seen that parents are unaware or simply don't care what their children are viewing. Mr. Speaker, Queensland children need to be protected and we are willing to impose age bans on TikTok for the protection of our children. Mr. Speaker, Queenslanders should reconsider their decisions about the use of artificial intelligence. AI is being used as a cheap labour alternative, leaving thousands of people out of work and requiring retraining. Losing your job and the thought of retraining is stressful, especially for hard-working Queenslanders who have been doing the same job and supporting their family for 20 years. Why should families suffer at the expense of cheaper labour costs? Mr. Speaker, my vision for Queensland is one where Queenslanders are healthy and know that they'll be looked after. A Queensland where our children are protected from cyber influences. A Queensland where the well-being of a family is guaranteed by safe and secure employment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Minister for Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this Youth Parliament supports that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. All anonymous self-driving vehicles are banned from Queensland roads and all public transport should be made free to use for anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to inform the House about my motions I will be putting forward today as Youth Minister of Transport. I will start with my first topic of all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. I support this motion because it will reduce air pollution, which will increase the overall public health in Queensland, as air pollution can increase chances of lung cancer or respiratory diseases such as emphysema. Another reason supporting this is that it will cut down on fossil fuels, saving them for better uses like power for Queensland. My second topic is all anonymous self-driving vehicles are banned from Queensland roads. I believe this motion because of the safety benefits it has. Because if you have this car, the tiniest glitch can put you in harm's way. This means if you have no control of the car, there's a possibility the car could drive you into another car, causing an accident, or it could send you into a tree or other dangerous objects, causing harm and damage to you and your car. Finally, speeding may occur with these cars as glitches. Lastly, all public transport should be made free for anyone in a major metropolitan area. My reasoning for this is that it will encourage the use of public transport, such as buses and trams that go around the city regularly. My second reason is it will reduce traffic, shorten the time it takes to get around, and save people money. It will also reduce the noise, which will give the locals peace of mind. I appreciate you letting me address the House today. I believe these motions are very achievable and that they will benefit Queensland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Shadow Minister for Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You have heard all the reasons why all vehicles should be electric within the next 5 years, but have you asked yourself what happens after that? Electric batteries won't decompose because of the lithium within the battery. Government has mentioned how hard it would be to make more electric vehicles because of the lack of minerals. Leading to this, batteries are made with minerals that have to be mined from the earth with diesel-powered machines. These batteries use rare materials that have to be mined from Pacific mining sites, destroying habitats. Electrical batteries are highly flammable. When an accident on the road occurs, these batteries are most likely to catch fire. When one of these batteries are on fire, they have to be submerged in water. Being a car, you will need a container filled with water to put the fire out. These cars are heavier than any other car because of the battery and car structure. As well as being heavy, these cars are more expensive. If the government is expecting us to change our cars and lifestyle to electric cars, why is it so expensive? Is a 16-year-old's first car going to be a $60,000 to $100,000 car that they might dent or crash? Most likely not. Thank you for listening, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Bukhara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the Minister of Transport's motion to create a more sustainable future for Queensland. Firstly, all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. It is well known that they are cheaper to maintain, have lower emissions, are more reliable, easier to drive, and cheaper than fuel. Australia has made a promise to be net zero by 2050, and electric vehicles will help us reach that goal. Secondly, self-driving vehicles are a disgraceful idea because they are expensive, they will cause job losses, security issues, more traffic, energy consumption, and pollution. Lastly, I think public transport should be free for everyone so they don't need to pay to get somewhere. Even people with no money will be able to go places. More people will use public transport, causing a reduction in the pollution and traffic on the roads, and it will help families in the rising cost of living. In conclusion, I support the Minister of Transport's motion, and I believe this will improve Queensland dramatically. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion that autonomous self-driving vehicles are banned from Queensland roads. Mr. Speaker, there are 6 million crashes yearly, and that number is rising. Unfortunately, most of these accidents are preventable and may be avoided if we consider the benefits of autonomous self-driving vehicles on our roads. Tragically, Mr. Speaker, the number of road deaths of young people and those aged over 65 is increasing. Self-driving cars are fitted with intelligent systems, including sensors, emergency braking. Mr. Speaker, self-driving cars do not fall asleep, they do not speed, they do not hoon and show off to their friends. Mr. Speaker, 1 in 5 Queenslanders have a disability, which can make driving challenging and stressful. Self-driving cars would allow them to travel safely without the challenges and stress, whilst keeping their independence. Mr. Speaker, autonomous self-driving vehicles will benefit all Queenslanders, making Queensland a healthier and safer state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Comet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. Also that autonomous self-driving vehicles should be banned from Queensland roads, and that all public transport should be free to be used for anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Electrically powered vehicles are a great benefit for the environment and cost less to run. Autonomous self-driving vehicles are dangerous when machine error could occur on Queensland roads. Free public transport for people living in a major metropolitan area is a benefit to the people, as less traffic will be on the roads, as more people will be on buses or trains. It is also a benefit for the environment as less vehicles are being used. This creates less greenhouse gas emissions, which saves our planet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. Mr. Speaker, electric vehicles are expensive. The current price gap compared to new petrol vehicles is around $10,000. The replacement cost of the batteries in electric vehicles is around $6,000. In these hard times, people simply cannot afford to buy an electric vehicle. Mr. Speaker, there are simply not enough charging stations around our large great state, and if you find one, it takes too long to charge. Mr. Speaker, this will see an end of our service stations. The collapse of these businesses will result in thousands of job losses. Mr. Speaker, 5 years is too short a time to make electric vehicles compulsory for Queenslanders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share with the House the reason for banning self-driving cars. Did you know that there are hacking attacks every 39 seconds? Self-driving cars are powered by computers and are more vulnerable to hacking because of the advanced computer system available. The hacks of these self-driving cars are dangerous for passengers, pedestrians and other people on the road. The potential is that hackers can hijack the self-driving cars off the side of the road, leading to illegal activities. Road deaths are on an increase, with nearly 300 deaths among last year on Queensland roads. I encourage the government to get together and ban autonomous self-driving vehicles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ulandilla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You may think electrically powered vehicles are the way forward, but you're wrong. The idea is costing you more than you think. It is being sold to us as a green, more affordable alternative that will help our environment. But have you considered where and how this power is made? To power these vehicles, coal must still be mined from our precious earth. This product creates just as much, if not more, than petrol fumes. If not more pollution than petrol fumes. We also need to think about the sustainability and unknown lifespan of lithium batteries. I'm all for a greener future, but this is not the way. To be better, we must work harder. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I am grateful for this opportunity to address the Assembly and discuss ways to revolutionise Queensland's public transportation system. Firstly, I propose making public transport free for the public. By doing so, we can ease the burden of fuel costs on citizens while providing reliable transport for their daily commutes. This will encourage more people to opt for public transport, leading to a big reduction in cars on the road and a decrease in our carbon footprint. Moreover, this has the potential to save lives and minimize the pressure on first responders by reducing the number of motor fuel accidents. Secondly, to tackle the issue of harmful carbon emissions, I suggest a mandate that all new vehicles sold in Queensland be electrically powered. However, we must be cautious about the use of fully autonomous vehicles, as their ability to be hacked and used for malicious purposes poses a significant risk, potentially resulting in increased road fatalities. I extend my gratitude to you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this platform to share these crucial thoughts. Let us work together for a greener and safer Queensland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Mossman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I wish to inform the House of why making public transport free in major metropolitan areas is such a terrible idea. If free public transport were a reality, car manufacturers and service providers could very well go out of business. Thousands of people could lose their jobs due to lack of customers wanting to pay for a taxi or for their own car. Less people buying cars would also mean less additional revenue to the government from no taxation to the roads, driver's license and insurance. So instead of using taxes for that cause, we can use the money to improve and benefit public transport in regional areas. School kids taking the bus instead of walking to school is much safer, as you can't always trust drivers and children to be safe. This would improve quality of life to a much greater extent. In conclusion, sometimes free things aren't all that great, and doing something like this could have serious ramifications. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ballandine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion transportation. Firstly, I strongly believe that all new vehicles sold in Queensland should be hybrids within the next 5 years. Electric vehicles are convenient for these reasons. They are cheaper to maintain, more fuel efficient, less pollution, reducing noise pollution that can generate stress and have a negative impact on health. Secondly, we must be cautious if we allow self-driving vehicles. Some concerns I have about the use of such vehicles are job loss, public safety on roads at risk from computer errors, loss of life or injury is not worth economic gains to Queenslanders. Thirdly, public transport should be made free to use across Queensland. This would be especially beneficial for low socio-economic families. More people would use public transport, causing a reduction in pollution, creating more jobs, and helping families with the rising cost of living. In conclusion, if we follow all these great ideas, Queensland will be a more sustainable and affordable place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to free public transport for all living in metropolitan areas, for example, Brisbane. I will tell you a few reasons why I am against this idea, because it's just not fair. Why should big cities that have lots of public transport opportunities get it free when regional areas don't? In my opinion, instead of making it free, the government should invest in more buses and taxis for regional areas like Gladstone. There are a very limited number of public transport options available in Gladstone, leaving people little option for travel. An example of this, there is only one school bus that services multiple primary schools. This means that kids are left to walk long distances home, which is not safe. When we look at the statistics of how many people that catch buses and other public transport options in Gladstone, 75% of people drive to and from work every day compared to the 7% of people who catch public transport. You must agree that instead of spending all of our taxpayers' money on making public transport free for all living in major metropolitan areas, we should be investing in those regions that have little. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Dangerra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to problematic cost of public transport. As a kid, I've never understood why public transport is not free. Just imagine if you had no money and no car. You wanted to go to a free swimming pool on a sweltering hot day to cool off. You walked to the bus stop, but only to find out it cost $10 to get on. How would you feel? Did you know at least 150 million people have felt that way? In some places in Europe, such as Belgium, the government pays for public transport, so nobody experiences that feeling. The cost of public transport leads to many problems, such as people start walking, which leads to public transport going out of business. That means people who rely on public transport can't go anywhere. People also can't go anywhere if public transport doesn't transport there. People living in a metropolitan area should have free transport to get around. In summary, cost of transport is problematic, leading to many issues, and I encourage you to protest against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Maroochy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion that all public transport should be made free to use for anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Mr. Speaker, at face value, having free transport in all metropolitan areas sounds like a great idea. However, after some actual thought, it quickly becomes clear, and what everybody knows, nothing is ever free. It's through our taxes, your taxes, my taxes, and the people of Maroochy's taxes that will pay for this so-called free transport. What is outrageously unfair is that these services are only available to city-dwelling residents, paid for by Queenslanders in our regions, hard-working people. It's just unfair. Mr. Speaker, it gets worse. As these city people take advantage of these free services, more services will be required. More taxes will need to be paid. Regional Queenslanders will be further exploited for the benefit of these city people. It's just unfair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the youth member for Archer, I am pleased to support the three motions introduced by our Minister for Transport that involves new vehicles in Queensland to be electricity powered within the next 5 years. They greatly reduce emissions, they will save millions of dollars over time, and will save the lives of over 2,500 people by 2030 due to a reduction in pollution. The second motion suggests that all self-driving vehicles should be banned on Queensland roads because of dangerous malfunctions, security issues like hacking, and hundreds of thousands of job losses in Queensland, furthermore causing accidents with innocent people costing money. The final motion put forward states that all public transport should be free in metropolitan areas due to improving air quality, saving money, and decreasing traffic around the city, thriving with places to live. In closing, I advocate this motion because of the impacts of health, safety, money saving, and environment saving in Queensland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Capella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion of transport in Queensland. Firstly, I believe that in the next 5 years, all new cars that are sold must be electrically powered. This would use fewer fossil fuels or limited resource and greatly reduce pollution in our state. Autonomous self-driving vehicles should be banned from Queensland roads as they are unsafe and can cause accidents. As road conditions are highly unpredictable and vary from place to place, self-driving vehicles are unable to adapt quickly enough to changes in road conditions, putting lives at risk. Lastly, all public transport, such as buses and trains, should be made free to use by anyone living in a major metropolitan area. This would save money, reduce vehicles on the road, and also reduce emissions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ballon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that increase the amount of fossil fuels used as less greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide will be produced. It will also create more jobs to build, maintain and develop the new vehicles. If autonomous self-driving vehicles were allowed on Queensland roads, thousands of truck drivers could lose their jobs. These self-driving cars are currently only in test phase and are still having accidents. They should be banned before someone gets hurt. If all public transport was made free in major metropolitan areas, then more people could get to places they currently can't afford to go. This may mean they can access a job or family and friends. This would also get a lot more cars off the road and prevent traffic jams. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Armadillo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that all new vehicles sold in Queensland within the next 5 years must be electric powered, that self-driving vehicles are forbidden from Queensland roads, and that public transport such as buses and taxis should be made free to anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Electric vehicles are cleaner, cheaper and more efficient than the cars that people currently use. Electric vehicles will reduce significant issues with pollution. Autonomous self-driving vehicles are unsafe and are likely to cause many fatalities. Public transport is a treasure that should be accessible to everyone. It can reduce the carbon footprint of our roads by reducing the number of vehicles on the roads. These initiatives will help form and shape Queensland and make it a safer place to work, play and live in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there anyone on the speaking list that I haven't called? The question is that the motion moved by the Youth Minister for Transport be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. The division is called Ring the Bells. Please close the bars. The question is that the motion be agreed to for which a division has been called. Will the government whip please advise what the government votes are for the ayes or noes?
50 ayes, Mr. Speaker.
Or will the opposition whip advise what the opposition votes are for the ayes or noes?
30 noes, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable youth members, the result of the division is ayes 50, noes 30. The division is resolved in the affirmative.
Good morning, youth members. We're moving into speaking list now for the statements, private member statements. As per the speaking list, can we start with the youth member of Diamantina, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to draw the attention of the House to the issues we are facing in our mental health services within the district of Diamantina. A few of these issues including staffing, the quality of care that is given and support within the system. Mental health is a major concern in Australia, especially in young people. With the personal connection to this issue, I have seen firsthand of the lack of support patients are given whilst in a mental health facility. Anxiety and depression affects 2.1 million Australians every year and is a real concern in our community. With the lack of facilities available to cope with the high number of people affected. The staff shortages in the mental health sector are putting a strain on the system. And the amount of support that is given to be given. In conclusion, I suppose
becomes free for people that are willing to become nurses or doctors in the field. The cost of becoming a nurse or a doctor scares a lot of people away from wanting to take up their career. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Darkwater.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the problems that we have with art in our local district of Darkwater. Firstly, there are not enough opportunities in Darkwater for younger children to paint after school, during school holidays or over the weekends. I believe more government grants should be available to local artists so that they are able to host more opportunities for local children to attend and develop their artistic skills. Secondly, the local artists need more opportunities to be showcased within our local communities. Not many people visit the museum, so I believe the government needs to fund more art in public places, such as commissioning murals on the walls of buildings and power poles in libraries and schools. Thirdly, artists need to be supported by purchase much needed art supplies which they can use in community workshops. By sharing their talent with the local community, they will inspire and develop the next generation of artists with the amazing arts they create. In conclusion, I feel a discussion should be held to support artists to keep inspiring young children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to draw the attention in the House towards the dredging happening in Gladstone Harbour. As you know, the industry in Gladstone produces a large quantity of pollution from the ground up. Today I will be mostly talking about the dredging in Gladstone Harbour. If you didn't know, dredging consists of sucking mud from the ocean floor and moving it to a more convenient place, such as expanding the land for future development. But we aren't considering what's happening down below. We are destroying habitat and other sanctuaries. Unfortunately, there is not a way around dredging. I understand it has to happen to keep the country running, with ships as our main import and export. But we need to consider the long term and come up with a productive solution that keeps our natural ecosystems thriving. I am suggesting a green zone where the mud that has been dredged could be placed in an area where a perfect estuary could be formed. For this green zone to thrive, we need to take regular samples of water quality, maintain the seagrass, and rehome and rehabilitate our marine life. It is time we start working with our oceans rather than destroying them beyond repair. By implementing this plan and similar policies, we could both have a healthy and productive harbour as well as a stable marine ecosystem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Can I call the youth member for Pike?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw attention of the House to poverty in Gladstone. Here are a few reasons why and how we can put an end to it. In Gladstone, there is enough money for everyone to have an equal share of it, but not everyone has enough. This is because many people have lots of money and don't even think about donating some to the poor, who have little to no money. Some families can't afford food, water and shelter, along with school supplies, meaning they go hungry, have no home to go to, and the children cannot receive an education. To help fix this, the government should lower the cost of living spaces so homeless people can afford shelter. The government should also strongly encourage and work with big businesses to donate or fund these charities to help local communities suffering from poverty. Another way to help the poor is by making charities more appealing to small local businesses. They could do this by having donation days in schools or workplaces. Some donation days at my school are Crazy Sock Day and Free Dress Days. On these days, you wear whatever socks or clothes you want if you bring a gold coin donation for charity. These are just a few ideas we could do to help end poverty. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Youth member for Staton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to Gladstone's healthcare. A basic human right is the ability to access healthcare. So why is it that in a city as big as Gladstone, residents are forced to travel hours to access the healthcare they need? In 2018, the Gladstone Mater Hospital closed its doors on expecting mothers, forcing them to leave their homes and families as they prepare to welcome their baby. This sounds barbaric, but it's the reality of women in Gladstone. People who need urgent care usually have to wait a long time just for a doctor or a specialist. We need to reinvest in Gladstone's healthcare. We need doctors, we need specialists, and we need them now. These doctors are imperative for our healthcare, and if our Gladstone citizens are being denied the access to healthcare they deserve, they are being denied their basic human rights. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to coral bleaching and pollution. We live at the world's largest reef, but 91% of the coral is bleaching. Coral bleaching is when coral is stressed by unusually warm ocean water. They lose the algae they eat, which turns them white. The mining and burning of fossil fuels contributes to our warming climate, trapping heat within our atmosphere. About 25% of the ocean's fish depend on healthy coral reefs. Once coral dies, reefs rarely come back, and entire reef ecosystems, which fish and people depend on, can die. Scientists say that coral bleaching could destroy most of the world's coral reefs within 100 years. We must do something to save our coral reefs for future generations. I invite the government to investigate alternatives to fossil fuels to help save our reefs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I call the member for Rankin, Opposition Whip?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform the House on the youth crime concern. There has been a recorded 3,395 distinct young people that had at least one proven offence. 72% of young offenders were male and 79% of young offenders were aged 15 and over. Some factors that have influenced the youth crime are lack of education, peer pressure, exposure to alcohol and vapes and other illegal substances, and family issues such as lack of parenting, supervision, abuse and neglect. I believe the youth offenders have thought they can have bad behaviour in primary school, as per my own experience, which has led to the offenders committing crimes. I believe that primary schools need to show students the right and wrong behaviour from a young age and enforce it throughout the 6 years of primary school. This will help keep students away from youth crime and crime in general. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I call the youth member for Baloo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion of why we should cut down the high costing prices. The number of affected people that cannot afford essential sources are ridiculous. People that used to live in homes are now either living in their vehicles, seeking for a shelter, or in poverty because house rates have gone up, rent has gone up, food and water, our keys to survival, have gone up, and things that make our cars move, like petrol, has gone up. Before, parents could go to the shops and buy a box of 12 eggs for $5.50, but now one box is $10.75. Our citizens are starving themselves because they want their children to have healthy and nutritional meals while feeding them well. This is why parents are sacrificing themselves for the sake of their children. Just imagine if that were you. You would be fighting every day to just get some money to buy decent food and essential sources to keep you alive. Things that make our car move, like petrol, has gone higher. Our local transports are running on fuel as well as our cars, and people need to get and go on time. If our petrol prices keep going up, then people might not buy petrol at all. Our citizens are struggling to keep themselves and others alive. Our elders are also fighting because not all of them get that help or support or money from the government. I strongly believe that we should step up and help our community face this crisis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Youth member for Pioneer.
Mr. Speaker, today I would like to share with the House my concerns towards the current car parking and traffic flow issues at Calliope State School. Calliope State School is situated on a major highway, the Dawson Highway. Currently there isn't enough safe parking options outside of our school. This causes traffic flow issues with cars trying to turn into our school and safety concerns for students trying to cross the road. I believe we could utilise the vacant railway land as parking. Our students could access this parking by using the underpass. This would also help ease the traffic congestion. If the vacant railway land was used as parking, this could also be utilised by the community for events at the rodeo grounds, including the Clyde Community Carols and other community events. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The youth member for Columbar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention to the House that hospitals aren't getting the staff that they need. I know that a change has to be made. One is the location. Tanham uses our hospital. That means people with major injuries could get a risk of not getting help on time, or they may have lost a lot of blood. Second of all, the Gladstone Hospital has a lot of people that come in per day, but the problem is they don't have enough staff. Most staff have to work overtime for patients. I believe with more staff, no one will have to work overtime. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can we call the youth member for Bloomfield?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to inform the House about koalas and how they're becoming extinct. The main reason koalas are becoming extinct is deforestation. Habitat loss is one of the greatest threats koalas live with. Land clearing, deforestation, and urbanisation are destroying vital eucalyptus tree forests which provide koalas with a home and food. Koalas are also declining in numbers quickly because of domestic dog attacks, bushfires and road accidents. Every year, over 4,000 koalas are killed in car accidents and dog attacks. The 2019 to 2020 Black Summer had a terrible impact on all of us, but mostly our koalas. 60,000 koalas were killed in the Black Summer. So I say save the koalas. Minimise land clearing to save habitat loss. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House my thoughts on a current situation of pollution in our waterways and oceans. Pollution is becoming a major issue. The ocean and waterways become polluted when rubbish and chemicals are dumped by humans, which impact the life of human and animal life. Much of our unwanted plastic ends up in the ocean, around 8 million tonnes of it each year. Because plastic in particular is different from other waste, it doesn't decompose, it stays in the ocean forever. I suggest that nets should be placed on all major drains to collect rubbish from entering waterways. There needs to be more education in schools to teach kids from an early age, as well as local councils holding information sessions. People need to be made more aware of how serious this issue is becoming before it is too late. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member. Youth member for Flinders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I stand before you to advocate for a green revolution that will breathe life into our school grounds. As a Year 6 student, I strongly believe that incorporating more gardens and tree planting into our school environment can have an enormous impact on helping to enhance our learning experiences. This will not only help with hands-on learning and environmental awareness within our schools, but also help promote health and well-being. These are just two of the many reasons this will help our local schools become a better learning environment for children like me and my fellow peers. Connection to nature enhances focus and creativity. Imagine a world where our classrooms extend beyond 4 walls and textbooks. By introducing more gardens and trees into our school grounds, we can create natural learning sanctuaries that foster a sense of connection to nature. Numerous studies have shown that having gardens in schools enhances focus and reduces stress from students. This will work to improve academic performance. When we are surrounded by the beauty of nature, we become more inspired and motivated to learn. Because of this, students will open their minds to endless possibilities. In conclusion, I firmly believe this will be an important change to our local schools. So, join me to sow the seeds of change in our school grounds. Thank you for your time.
Can I call the youth member for Casuarina?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the lack of essential medical services at the Gladstone Hospital and in the region. Gladstone is a large industrial town with multiple industries. These industries all have the potential to inflict major injury upon their workers if something goes wrong.
Why are we risking people's lives by not providing adequate services at our hospital? More needs to be done by our state government to encourage trained specialists, doctors and nurses to staff our regional hospital. People in the Gladstone region have to wait longer, travel further and spend more money than people that live in the southeast corner. The needs of our constituents in the regional areas should not be treated any different to those in the city. More needs to be done for our regional medical facilities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Youth Member for Daintree.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share with the House the pressing issue that demands our urgent attention, the severe shortage of affordable rental housing in central Queensland. According to a report in 2022, rents have risen in Queensland at a faster rate than any other Australian state or territory. In Gladstone, the cost of rental housing has risen by 80% over the past 5 years. Sadly, these high rental prices are causing many families to struggle and abandon the greater Gladstone area. Businesses are hurting too. Some businesses also struggle to stay competitive with the high rental costs. Support for our local people to live in affordable housing is a priority. Funding needs to be available to offset unaffordable housing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Dalrymple, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform the House of the lack of large-scale events held in the Gladstone region. The people of the Gladstone region have to travel to major cities to see concerts and other main events. The people of our region have to spend greater amounts of money, travel further and secure accommodations, plus the ticket price compared to the people living in more populated areas like the southeast corner of Queensland. As Gladstone is a regional centre, establishing a place for major events would benefit the people and businesses of the greater Gladstone area. Our state government should invest money towards establishing the facilities to host large major events into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I call the Youth Member for Herbert?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw attention of the House to the issue of youth crime not only in my hometown of Yeppoon but also in many parts of the state. Many people I know, including myself, would like to see more resources provided to helping disadvantaged young people whom haven't had the same opportunities as most of us. I've witnessed people in my community trying to help the issue by offering programs for disadvantaged youth to attend for free, like my local MMA gym I attend. I call on the government to provide greater financial assistance to allow more access to programs for less fortunate youth. This would allow them to build relationships with people from different backgrounds and could help shape their views on what's right and wrong, enabling them to make better decisions. I think there is a good opportunity for government to step up and help communities tackle the issue together, and I believe this would warmly be welcomed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Member for Hopewell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention to the House about a problem in our environment. Have you heard of a tree called the eucalyptus squamosa or flaky barked rough gum? Not many of these trees are in CQ anymore. And what about the tawny frogmouth? This is a bird that is most famous for sitting really still in a tree, like a stick. The tawny frogmouth really needs eucalyptus squamosa for its bark. It's a really bad nest builder and just plucks some sticks and leaves on the branch. They need the flaky bark of the eucalyptus squamosa to hold their pile of sticks in place. But here in CQ, the nesting of trees without this type of bark, and so chicks and even eggs are falling out of the tree. I would like to table this map. In the pink shows the number of eucalyptus forests that have been chopped down since settlement. The green shows what's left. So everyone, plant more trees. You can do this on School Tree Day on July and National Tree Planting Day on August the 6th. Please go along and plant heaps of eucalyptus squamosas to be homes for unique Australian animals like the tawny frogmouth. Thank you, Mr. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member, for using the first prop of the day. That's fine. Can I call the Youth Member for Landsborough, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Image a world where every child, regardless of where they live, has equal access to quality education. As a Year 6 student, I stand before you today to advocate for increased resource to remote country state primary schools in Queensland. By providing these schools with the necessary tools and support, we can
promote learning opportunities for all kids regardless of their geographic location. Let me tell you, 2 compelling reasons why supporting this proposition is critical for creating a more equitable education system. Firstly, every child deserves an equal chance to succeed, regardless of where they live. By increasing resources to remote and country state primary, we can bridge the education gap and provide students with the same opportunities as their urban counterparts. Access to modern technology empowers students in rural areas to thrive academically and reach their full potential. Shouldn't we strive for a more fair and inclusive education system that nurtures every young mind? Secondly, investing in remote country-state primary schools is an investment in the future of our nation. These schools produce leaders, innovators and change makers tomorrow. By producing them with their adequate resources, we are fostering a generation of capable individuals who can contribute positively to society. Should we support the growth and development of all students regardless of their postcode? In conclusion, supporting an increase in resources to remote country-state primary schools in Queensland are essential for promoting learning opportunities and fostering a fair and inclusive education system. Let us work together to ensure that every young Australian has a chance to unleash their full potential and build a brighter future for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I call a youth member for Boyne?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw to the attention of the House to the issue of rural and remote health. 7 million or 28% of the Australian population live in remote areas. 7 million people face barriers to accessing healthcare due to low population density, limited hospitals healthcare due to low and emergency care, health work shortages and lower rates of cancer screenings. Australians living in remote areas experience health workforce shortages despite having a greater need for medical services with a broader scope of practice. Deaths from conditions that are potentially avoidable through primary care and hospital care are increasing by remoteness. What I want to see is a change to this, providing further accessibility to remote areas for their health and well-being, meaning more availability to cancer screenings, more hospitals and infrastructure, and more health workers varying from dentists to all kinds of specialists. Achieving accessibility and availability of healthcare to each and everyone living in rural and remote areas is what I aim for. Everyone has the right to healthcare. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. And before we get started, I'll just say a welcome here this afternoon. And I've only been in my job for just over a year, so you might be feeling a little nervous being your first time, but I'm still a little nervous with my job too, so it's completely okay. And with that, I wish you all good luck for this afternoon. It's been great to listen in. You've been giving wonderful contributions. But I call the Youth Shadow Minister for Information Technology.
Mr. Speaker, I move to that this Youth Parliament supports 1. That a curfew will apply to all internet-connected devices for all students in Queensland primary schools. Students will not have access to the internet or social media sites after 5 p.m. and before 7:30 a.m. 2. That Year 6 primary school students must attend homework clubs to be facilitated by their school for a minimum of 3 afternoons a week. 3. That 20% of student work, equivalent to 1 day per week in Year 6, should be self-directed and completed online. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion of 20% of student work equivalent to 1 day per week in Year 6 should be self-directed and completed online. Have you ever thought what all parents ultimately want for their children in the future? Independence is one of the key factors for human growth. Learning to be self-directed in Year 6 is a great skill to develop while working online. There is an immense amount of problem solving occurring when the student is interacting with websites, tackling challenges presented, being resilient, persisting when tasks become harder, and having self-drive. Those skills will prove venturing into a new educational setting. Students who are intrinsically driven will automatically study without promoting from parents. They will also learn how to use their time more efficiently than others. Students will also learn a life balance of studying and social time. So in conclusion, self-directed learning online is a positive start for greater things to come.
I now call the Youth Minister for Information Technology.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister for Information Technology, I absolutely oppose the proposal that all students be forced to do homework club after school. While it may help some students, it will be horrible for some of the other students. Homework club will cause disruption to our parents, the bus company, children's sport and teachers. Because of the distance some students travel to school, up to about 100 kilometres round trip, our parents don't have the time to pick up their children from school, and a school bus only comes at a certain time. This is inconvenient. In addition, homework club prevents children from doing physical activities out in the fresh air. This is not healthy for children. Research has shown children need at least 3 hours a day of physical activity. Also, some children will be tired and will have had enough at the end of school. That is why I say no homework club.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am the youth member for Nerang, and I am pleased to speak in support of the motion, overnight curfew on internet access for primary students. I strongly believe that imposing an internet curfew can only benefit children's health and well-being. First and foremost, it is known that screens impact children's quality of sleep. Studies show that blue light in computer and phone screens mimics sunlight and reduces production of sleep hormones. Without internet access, children are far less likely to be using a screen and are more likely to get the recommended hours of sleep. Another point to consider is the health benefits for children of reducing internet use. Children are more likely to engage in healthier activities such as sport and study. Their emotional well-being will benefit from more family time, and finally, children will be safer from cyberbullying and contact with strangers as they aren't online during parents' busy time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member. I now call the Youth Member for Endeavour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, teachers and fellow students, are you ready to surrender your afternoons to mandatory homework clubs? I stand before you, a Year 6 student, to voice my strong opposition to the proposition of compelling us to attend homework clubs 3 days a week. While the idea of extra academic support may seem beneficial, I firmly believe that this mandatory arrangement would restrict our personal time, hinder our individual learning styles, and overlook the importance of a balanced lifestyle. Let me share 3 compelling reasons why we should rethink the introduction of compulsory homework clubs. The introduction of mandatory homework clubs would severely limit our personal time and freedom. As Year 6 students, our days are already filled with academic responsibilities and extracurricular activities and family commitments. It encompasses physical health, emotional well-being, and the development of life skills. Instead of imposing a rigid structure, shouldn't we be encouraged to explore our unique strengths and learning preferences? In conclusion, the proposition of compulsory homework clubs 3 days a week poses significant drawbacks. It infringes upon our personal time, neglects our individual learning styles, and overlooks the importance of a balanced lifestyle. Thank you for your attention.
I now call the Youth Member for Wenlock.
Thank you, Speaker. I am here today to tell you why we must have a curfew for all internet-connected devices for students in Queensland primary schools.
Firstly, there is a high number of students that are sleep deprived and not performing their best at school. This is because of too much technology at night time. It has been proven that the grades from Queensland schools have gone down because kids are staying up too late at night making videos for social media instead of sleeping. This is one of the reasons why we need an internet curfew for all Queensland schools. Secondly, there are too many students that have social media. They are too young for some of the inappropriate content on there, so we must stop kids having social media so they don't keep getting bad grades and don't stay up too late. Lastly, students should have less than 2 hours of screen time per day because the blue light filter is bad for their eyes. If they're on it for more than 2 hours with their friends might hop offline and they will be left alone and no one will be there to protect them. Thank you, Speaker.
I now call the youth member for Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and fellow students. Today I stand before you to express my opposition to the implementation of homework clubs 3 times a week in school. Firstly, there should not be homework clubs because students are already at school for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. They do not need extra schooling. The students will not focus on the work they are given in school because they have not had enough sleep and are tired. Secondly, it may be difficult for parents that are working long hours for them to pick their children or child up from homework clubs. Finally, many students have sport commencements as well. They will be late for sports training. This will affect our personal well-being and freedom. Thank you for your time.
I now call the youth member for Nagoa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that 20% of student work in Year 6 should be self-directed and completed online for 1 school day a week for the following reasons. To be better prepared to transition to high school, you must learn to be on schedule. I personally believe that self-directed online learning can be a highly effective way for students to develop their skills and knowledge. By taking charge of their own learning, students can gain a greater sense of responsibility and accountability and learn to work independently. Traits like discipline, integrity, accountability and responsibility are great for anything. These traits will help you to be a great leader and a reliable person for your family, colleagues and relationships. If you want to be self-directed, you will need to stay on task and not procrastinate. Additionally, online learning provides students with access to a great variety of resources and information that they might not otherwise have found. With these benefits in mind, I support the motion that schools implement self-directed online learning programs to supplement traditional classroom instructions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now call the youth member for Lighthouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I stand before you to express my strong opinion to the introduction of a requirement of 20% of student work equivalent to 1 day a week to be self-directed and completed online. I think not. While the idea of embracing technology and fostering independence may seem appealing, I firmly believe that such a requirement would limit our learning potential, hinder social development, and increase the risks of academic inequalities. Allow me to present a compelling reason why we should reconsider this proposition. Self-directed online work assumes equal access to technology and reliable internet connections for all students. Unfortunately, this assumption does not hold true in every household. Some students may not have access to personal computers, high-speed internet, or necessary digital resources required for effective self-directed online work. Implementing this requirement without considering the disparities in access would further widen the academic inequalities that already exist. It is crucial to ensure that every student has equal opportunities to succeed regardless of their technological resources at home. In conclusion, the proposal to introduce a requirement of 20% of student work to be self-directed and completed online fails to acknowledge the value of personalised teacher guidance, hampers social development and exacerbates exciting academic equalities, and address the technological disparities among students. Thank you for listening, Mr. Speaker.
I now call the youth member for Maranoa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion of that Year 6 students must attend homework clubs for a minimum of 3 afternoons a week. Committing to a regular homework club will promote areas to growth and encourage students to be independent learners.
Homework clubs are safe, supportive and productive meetups out of school hours to assist students in completing their homework. COVID has changed the workforce where people are working more independently in various settings and having more flexibility in working. Programming and coding have become strong skills to acquire. A homework club promotes this information that is more efficient. To conclude, having that dedicated time to homework during the week is setting up students to develop strong life skills.
I now call the youth member for Embley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies, gentlemen, teachers and fellow students, I stand before you today to inform the House of a horrid suggestion. Some propose that 20% of student work, the equivalent of 1 day per week in Year 6, should be self-directed and completed online. Well, I think not. Allow me to introduce some excellent truthful reasons of why 20% of school work being self-directed and online is an outrageous idea. Firstly, while some studies and activities must be completed on a screen, most studies have shown that prolonged screen time can lead to serious side effects such as eye strain, sleeping troubles, social problems and decreased physical activities. It is suggested that the maximum amount of screen time per day for a Year 6 student is 2 hours per day. Secondly, self-directed work may lead to educational threats. For example, if they do whatever they want on a computer 1 day per week and search up such things as who voiced Stitch in the movie, and trust me, some would, it would distract them from more important subjects which would make them gain low grades and make them struggle in further life with important skills such as comprehensive understanding, potential health and communication skills, common understanding and manners. By moving such a large portion of our work online, we lose valuable and various opportunities for social learning and making our ability to grow in future settings. But that doesn't matter, right? Wrong. If a person doesn't cover these things in school, it is likely that they shall struggle in later life. Thirdly, if Year 6 students do a day every week where they do what they want all day on the computers, then we lose valuable learning time for more important subjects. Delving into subjects assigned to us teach us more important skills and facts for later life. Going online all day doing what we want on our own devices, then we may encounter difficulties throughout scholarly years and after graduation. Thank you for your attention.
I now call the youth member for Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm going to provide you with many reasons on why 20% of Year 6 students' work should be self-directed and completed online. Firstly, it is evident that online learning is the future of education. Do you know of any businesses that still use a pen and paper? No. So students should have the same opportunity as adults. Secondly, it is extremely flexible. If you want to go fishing or hunting or do anything fun, you can take it with you, or you can go and simply come back. If it was in school time, you have a limited time of 8 AM to 3 PM to finish, and you have to listen to people talking around you. Whereas if you study online learning, you will have so much more time. Next, online learning offers a wide range of programs. You can just find all of the information on the program instead of spending ages looking it up in a book. It is a million times quicker just study it online. Online learning is completely accessible anywhere and at any time. Current school settings make you attend a site or a campus. Online learning for 1 day a week would allow you to stay home where you're comfortable and relaxed. Online learning statistics state that 70% of students agree that online classes are better than being at school. If kids prefer to learn online, then we should let them do it for 1 day per week. Lastly, it is very obvious that I've already told you heaps of reasons on why 20% of Year 6 students' work should be online. It is only once a week, so drop that pen and paper, close the classroom door and let them learn online right now.
I now call the youth member for Limestone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here to speak against the internet curfew. The proposed curfew will not allow students to have internet access or social media sites after 5 PM and before 7:30 AM. This idea is downright bad. Students should be able to have time on video games with their mates or just in social media sites after a hard day of work doing schoolwork. This curfew is also limiting students' access to learning apps like Prodigy and Literacy Planet and news about what's going on around the world and local news. addition to this, not having access to internet after 5 p.m. can present safety issues as well. If your mum asks you to go get groceries at 5 p.m. from across the street at IJ and you hurt yourself on your bike, you will not be able to contact anyone. You'll just be sitting there on the edge of the road crying until the pain stops. Then you'll get up, get the groceries, go home. Then your mum will ask you, what happened to your leg? And you would say, I hurt myself, but I couldn't contact you because of the internet curfew. Imposing a curfew, on the other hand, does not address the underlying issue of developing responsible digital habits and may create a false sense of security without teaching students mental skills for the online world. Thank you for listening.
I now call the youth member for Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share with the House about implementation for curfew for primary school students' use of internet and social media sites. I propose this curfew to go from 5 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. High levels of use of internet and social media sites cause unhealthy sleep patterns, overstimulation of the brain at bedtime from the bright blue light from the screen, and also lots of depression and anxiety from cyberbullying. The curfew will help with less screen time, better sleep, and less bullying online. The curfew will also help with more study time for school and also encouraging family activities that will strengthen family bond, creating a positive mindset for your body. In conclusion, I am in favour of the curfew and I think you should too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now call the youth member for Ambula.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member for Ambolia, I strongly disagree with the opposition motion and believe that students should not be forced to spend almost 1 day per week learning by themselves on a computer. Is it going to be helpful, important, necessary for their learning? Already when some students are asked to go on their computer and work by themselves, they go play games and are not on task that the teacher has set. Who is watching to make sure everyone is learning? Also, what will happen when you are on your computer doing your work and you don't understand the activity? How will you get help? Is a teacher just going to be there to help us, or do we keep doing the wrong thing? No, I really think this is a terrible idea. Thank you for listening to me.
I now call the youth member for Normanby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Parliament is discussing enforcing the internet ban curfew from 5 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. By putting this curfew in place, that would be good for students, and this is why. Firstly, by having a curfew would give children a lot of time to call friends and family that might live far away and want to call them when we get home. Being able to call them would be good for the children's mental health, as they might be going through some tough times or family problems that they need to talk about. My second reason is that by having a curfew would give us more time to go outside and get some fresh air and give us more time to play sport. This would lead to us having a better and healthier lifestyle. Thirdly is being able to do more homework with no internet distractions. No internet access will allow us to do our homework to the best of our abilities with no distractions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, youth member. Is there anyone on the speaking list that I have not called? The question is that the motion moved by the Youth Shadow Minister for Information Technology be agreed to. Those who are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. No. I think the noes have it. A division is called. Ring the bells. Will the government whip please advise what the government votes are for the ayes or noes? Will the opposition whip please advise what the opposition votes are for the ayes or noes? Honourable youth members, the result of the division is ayes 30 and noes 50. The division is resolved in the negative.
I call the youth leader of the House.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
I call the youth member for Homestead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share with the House my thoughts on deforestation. Understanding the need to clear land and how to reduce these needs is key to understanding how local and global communities can protect these ecosystems. Why is there deforestation, you may ask? Homes, hospitals, schools, farming and mining, just to name a few. What are the consequences? Loss of habitat, pollution and animals becoming endangered or even extinct. Animals such as koalas lose their homes for us to build ours. How do we balance the need for both? Did you know that in Queensland alone, about 34 million native animals are killed every year as a result of deforestation? In a perfect world, we would have no need for deforestation. This is something we should always try to achieve. Recycling to limit waste, wind farming, solar, and sustainable farming are all ways in achieving this goal. If we find our balance, we will find a better way forward into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Pascoe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform this House of the growing issue of online safety for our youth and why this needs to be addressed for Queenslanders. Mr. Speaker, the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare reports hospitalised self-harm incidents by Indigenous female youth had nearly tripled, and suicide deaths of youth between 15 and 17 had more than doubled. Mr. Speaker, alarmingly 53% of young Aussies report being cyberbullied. Less than half of them spoke to family or friends about it, and only 21% reported it to a school. There is a gap between available support and the victim's willingness to engage. Mr. Speaker, support such as Kids Helpline can only help after the kids are aware and reach out. These statistics have faces, Mr. Speaker, like Delilah, a 13-year-old student who tragically took her own life after acts of cyberbullying. Mr. Speaker, we cannot hide from this issue and we must encourage more open, frank and authentic conversations so kids can identify what is happening and what they are feeling. I want my generation to be confident Queenslanders who enjoy the wonders of this state for many, many years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Georgina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to some issues affecting people with disabilities, such as access to safe places and specialists. Firstly, it can take over 3 hours for people in the area of Georgina to get to a health specialist appointment. That is unacceptable. It's not just because of the long drives, it's also very expensive buying fuel, which in turn is damaging the environment. The time spent on travelling and money spent on fuel could be spent better on their education and on purchasing special equipment instead. Secondly, children with disabilities deserve to have accessible playgrounds, such as wheelchair swings and ramps, reachable braille and communication boards. Having accessible playgrounds will allow children to be more active and overall make them feel happier and more included in their community. People with disabilities deserve to be supported. Having specialists nearby and more accessible playgrounds will boost their participation in our society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Zamia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm going to blow your minds about living in rural towns. Queensland has half its population living in the southeast corner of the state. These people need to get out to rural and remote areas and see what our great state has to offer. Firstly, living in a rural town, you'll know most people. Everyone will know you, which is nice because everyone will say hello when they see you, and you'll never be lonely in a rural town knowing there's a person out there that cares about you. This is one of the reasons living in a rural town is fantastic. Secondly, in a rural town there are no big industrial buildings polluting the air. There is no smoke or huge buildings taking up space, natural space. Plenty of room for housing, shops, parks and play areas. What a wonderful place to bring up a family. You are never bored in a rural town. There are lots of community groups which help support the town. Joining one of these groups is fun and rewarding. You know the people you are helping. That is what makes it great. Maps and GPS are not needed in a rural town. You'll know where to go just by getting the feel of the place. Rural towns give you the chance to switch off and relax. Walking the streets and feeling the wind in your hair can add 10 years to your life. We encourage you to get out and see what our Queensland rural towns have to offer.
They are rich with history and amazing people. Thank you, Mr.
I call the youth leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I stand before you to address a pressing issue that affects us all. The waiting time in our emergency departments. Time is life, and every second counts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the rising number of school children who do not have breakfast and the need to provide simple cooking skills for primary school children. Mr. Speaker, so many parents leave home for work early, leaving their children to get themselves ready for school. Many children do not have the necessary skills to independently make themselves breakfast and prepare nutritious food for their lunchbox. Mr. Speaker, these children skip breakfast and go to school with junk food or an empty lunchbox. Mr. Speaker, studies show that not having breakfast affects a child's mental performance, including their ability to pay attention and concentrate. Children who usually eat breakfast tend to perform better academically compared with those who usually skip breakfast. Mr. Speaker, children in primary school should be taught simple cooking skills so they can have academic success at school and become productive Queenslanders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to inform the House of some of the issues people face in regional areas regarding education. My first point is the challenge of accessing educational experiences. Universities and TAFEs are only located in big towns or cities, which can be too far away for people living in rural areas such as Fairview. Often, the lack of subject choice on offer, as well as the additional cost and time to attend classes, puts people off developing their education further. Some students have to travel over an hour from their home to attend school, and it's unacceptable. Additionally, small towns struggle to attract and retain teaching staff. New staff often struggle to integrate due to limited number of activities outside of work. Due to distance, staff often feel isolated from family and friends. Finally, location adds pressure regarding resources. Students with additional needs struggle to access specialists such as psychologists and social workers, and the internet is often slow and unreliable. In conclusion, we should review our education system to ensure that location, staff and resources do not continue to disadvantage students who live in regional Queensland. Education is vitally important for our youth, families and the state. I would love to see a review occur and the changes identified implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Severn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform this House that every year more than 2,000 young drivers are injured or hospitalised due to motor vehicle accidents on Queensland roads. Sadly, around 100 young drivers are killed as a result of these accidents. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable. I strongly urge the government to begin funding defensive driving courses and road safety education for all new drivers as part of the licensing process. Mr. Speaker, compulsory defensive driving training for all new drivers would reinforce the responsibility of drivers for their own safety, the safety of their passengers and the safety of other road users. New drivers would not only be alerted to the dangers of driving but provided the skills to avoid those dangers on our roads. It is a skill set that would save lives. Mr. Speaker, we are the young drivers of the future and we need to drive smarter and safer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Annan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention to the House to speak of the topic of getting more women and girls involved in sport. You may not think this is a big deal anymore, but it still stops many females from fulfilling their dreams. In Australia, the percentage of female versus male participation in sport from ages 0 to 14 is 42% and 45%, whereas when they reach 15 and over, the participation drops to 35% for females and rises to 49% for males. Some of the many reasons why girls do not participate in after-school sporting activities are that there is a lack of opportunities and variety in towns such as Gingin. Females can suffer from low confidence due to sexist behaviour from the opposite gender. There is also the cost of travel, membership fees and equipment. Females are not the only ones who go through this. Males go through it too. But as they get older and start to do the sport professionally, the females will only get paid a fraction of what the males do. In conclusion, I strongly believe, and you should too, that girls should not be unable to do sport and should be given equal sporting opportunities.
I call the youth member for Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House the concern for the cost of living. Mental health is a huge industry employing many professionals who are assisting people with issues that influence them coping with life. One thing that is impacting on people's well-being is the constant rise of costs to simply live, including parents attempting to meet the basic needs of their children. If people's wages match the increased mortgage payments, local rates, soaring rents, house prices, food, petrol and retail, and electricity hikes, to name a few, then the problem would not be as compounded. But oh no, there is no money tree out there. If there was, I wouldn't be standing here. Therefore, the increase of living outweighs the cost of survival. Family budget cuts, this has a concertina effect where local charities are inundated with low income, vulnerable families that are wishing to be fed, families becoming homeless. Family holidays are a past treat. Purchasing that luxury item is long gone. We are also seeing families who've never needed financial support but are desperate for it now. One small change can impact lives completely. There is a positive side to this gloom and doom. People are becoming innovative. The money influencers are sharing ideas to all to help reduce the stress. TikTok, YouTube and Instagram are helping kids become financially savvy, which can set them up for financial success as adults. There is nothing wrong with standing in line at tuck shop and purchasing a child's food with their own money and keeping the change. Ching! So while things are grim, let's have some vim. Let's encourage people to be more proactive and take the power back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Eaglehawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share with the House a truly unique festival that takes place in our Gladstone region. Under the Trees is a festival which is held annually in September, bringing live music, street theatre and the arts to our region. As its name states, it is actually held under the trees in the picturesque coastal community of Boyne Island. This festival is one of a kind. Not only does this festival bring people together, it put Boyne Island on the map. Under the Trees attracts tourists to our region. Once they're here, they realise the true beauty of this town and everything it has to offer, which generates income for our local community. It is time to celebrate and recognise the Under the Trees Festival. It is something to suit everyone, young and old. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Suter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I stand before to inform you of the environmental impact of electric cars on our nation. One of the reasons this is an issue is because only 5% of the world's batteries are currently recycled due to high cost and rather long process that is required to recycle batteries. As a result, a significant number of batteries don't get recycled and end up in landfill, adding to the environmental footprint. Studies show the production process of an electric battery have higher carbon emissions than a normal vehicle. Mining the materials for a battery has a high environmental cost to nature. The environmental impact of a battery production comes from the toxic fumes that are released during the mining process and the water-intensive nature of the activity. In addition to this, there is currently no effective way to recycle the electric motors. Just like most of the batteries, it will end up in landfill because there is no viable recycling or disposal alternative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to draw the attention of the House to regional safety. Have you ever not felt safe in your own home? Gladstone residents are feeling this constantly due to the amount of recent break-ins. People sometimes forget that safety starts with you. We need to be aware of where we put our belongings and other surroundings when we're out. You can't keep blaming the people and police who are supposed to protect you if you aren't keeping your valuables in a safe place or locking your doors or cars. My personal belief is you shouldn't need to pay to feel safe. Cameras and security equipment for our homes are extremely expensive and not everyone can afford them. I think every house sold should come with a small safety kit with a few alarms and cameras. After all, it is mandatory for homes to have smoke detectors installed. Why not some security? The main criminals nowadays are youths, and our juvenile detention centres are full, so petty crimes just get a slap on the wrist. This isn't a big enough punishment because they get away with it and they think it's alright to do, and it's not. I ask, what is the government doing to help this? I believe that change can start with us. Schools should be talking about these issues and how you can be in charge of your own safety within our classroom. Home security should be mandatory and punishment should fit the crime. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Kalula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to speak to the House about the wonderful events that are highly popular to locals and tourists in the Boyne, Tanham, Gladstone areas. Some exciting events that showcase our area are Luminous, a popular light show that is held after dark at the Tondoon Botanical Gardens. Bear, a local favourite that offers different market stalls and live music. Under the Trees, a fantastic music and arts festival that is locally inspired and hosted annually. Other fantastic events include Symphony Under the Stars, the Harbour Festival, and the Combined School Musicals offer both locals and visitors exciting opportunities to enjoy our local area. These events support local businesses and raise not only money but awareness of the beauty of our area. Overall, these events are a great opportunity to celebrate and grow our local community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to tourism in Gladstone. We live in a beautiful coastal region located on the Great Barrier Reef. So why doesn't Gladstone attract tourism? Because we don't cater for them. As a town, we are so focused on industry, we forget about our wider economy and small locally owned businesses. I propose we invest in our beautiful region and capitalise on what we have on our doorstep. With more accommodation, eateries and entertainment along our beaches, the Gladstone region could become the next coastal tourist attraction, injecting life and money into our local economy. It's time to invest in our money into our futures. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Canungra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a Youth Prime Minister of Canungra, I'd like to tell you about a quite remote town called Turkey Beach on the coast between Gladstone and Bundaberg. Turkey Beach is a wonderful town about 65 kilometres south of Gladstone, but rent is skyrocketing and there is barely any affordable housing. Majority of people are from a lower socio-economic group, and some people can't get a job because they are too far from town. People cannot afford rising rents and jobs are becoming scarce. The government should limit rent increases so people can afford to live here and can stay with their friends and attend the local school. If too many families leave the area, the school will get too small and not have enough students and will shut down.
I call the youth member for Yarraman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to bring to your attention the critical shortage of doctors in rural and remote areas. Our town, Monto, currently has no permanent doctors. This is due to a number of reasons. Firstly, there is national shortage of doctors and they prefer to work in populated areas. This has left our rural and remote areas struggling for staff. The government needs to make rural and remote areas more attractive to doctors. This could be done by raising their pay rate or by providing them with free high-quality housing. We need doctors in rural and remote areas urgently. A massive impact on residents' lifestyle and health is had when they have to travel or fly to doctors in bigger cities. This is expensive and time-consuming because there aren't enough doctors in rural towns. Some adults don't have time to travel. The cost of travelling as well as medical care add up and can be expensive. Rural people should not miss out on health care because of where they live. The shortage of doctors has a huge impact on medical staff. Pressure placed on nurses in our rural and remote area hospitals that have no doctors is immense. They have to deal with high-level patients because there are no doctors available. This impacts negatively on their well-being and the level of care provided by the hospital. With the support of more doctors in rural areas, nurses will have less to worry about. Lastly, farmers usually live in small towns and when they have accidents they have to travel a long way for help, when rural and remote areas have no doctors. This decreases their survival rate in a life-threatening situation. With the increase in doctors in rural and remote areas, our farmer will have a better life outcome. In conclusion, the government needs to come up with solutions to the critical shortage of doctors in rural and remote areas.
I call the youth member for Kandanga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the wonderful event of BAM, Beach Arts and Music, held along the Tannum Esplanade monthly. BAM brings more people to our community, both locals and tourists, and it helps people celebrate their creativity. BAM also brings money into our community throughout the market opportunities. BAM offers a unique experience and brings our communities together, which is something to celebrate. It helps people show their talents to the community. It helps local guides and scouts and other worldwide volunteer groups raise money and showcases our beautiful community. Since it began, BAM has become an important part of the Boyne-Tannum community calendar. BAM's popularity is so great that there is much support for it to be held twice a month. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the Great Barrier Reef as a living, growing, changing and dying entity, just as we humans do. Mr. Speaker, so why shouldn't it be entitled to the rights humans receive? The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest single structure made by living organisms, and it needs to be fiercely protected. Mr. Speaker, I strongly urge this House to declare the Great Barrier Reef a legal person. This will allow the reef to be represented in court by appointed legal guardians and giving the reef greater environmental protection and rights. Mr. Speaker, this may sound bizarre, but in 2017, this is exactly what happened with the Wanganui River in New Zealand, a review by Maori tribes as a living force. Is that not exactly what the Great Barrier Reef is? A living force? Mr. Speaker, agricultural land runoff is one of the biggest threats to the reef. Legal personhood would allow the reef guardians, acting on behalf of the reef itself, to hold those who do not responsibly dispose of and manage chemical runoff accountable.
I call the youth member for Glenrowan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a youth member for Glenrowan, I am fortunate enough to live in a small remote town on the coast, 70 kilometres south of Gladstone, called Turkey Beach. It has come to my attention that Turkey Beach desperately needs more fishery officers to look after the pristine beaches and monitor the creeks, so the residents do not need to worry about having their crab pots stolen or raided and hooks being carelessly left on the beach. Replacing crab pots is extremely expensive, and residents, many who are retired, don't have a lot of money, so they cannot afford it. Hooks carelessly being left on the beaches can hurt children and animals. The Fisheries Department need to be more proactive in patrolling the creeks and giving out fines, not only for crab pots being stolen, but for people who are taking undersized fish. The Turkey Beach community is so lucky to live in a beautiful environment. Now let's keep it this way for future generations.
I call the youth member for Fitzroy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to draw the attention of the House to a very serious problem here in Fitzroy: sporting clubs and the lack of options for children to develop their areas of interest. I believe having more sports clubs nearby will increase the number of students participating in outside of school sports. The Queensland Preventative Health Survey showed that only 41% of Queensland children were taking sufficient physical activity. If we don't change things, most school children won't learn important life skills like communication, social, problem solving, fine and gross motor skills. Schools are doing a great job stepping in for the lack of sporting clubs by introducing students to other sports and giving students sporting opportunities. Students are interested and want to participate in a competitive sports club, but the ones we already have here are much too expensive. I propose a $100 sports voucher to help with that. The money will come out of the government's education fund and will be distributed by schools. This will help lower the cost of joining a sports club. Australia has a reputation for developing outstanding athletes and is ranked third in the world for its sporting achievements. However, rural children who cannot access sporting facilities will never be able to reach their full potential. We need to do better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform the House about the poor quality of our public roads in central Queensland. The increasing population and changing weather patterns are creating more damage by causing more traffic and increasing rainfall. These two factors combined produce potholes and cracks in the road structure. Damaged roads create work for the repair crews, traffic delays, and danger for the drivers.
Traffic delays make people feel upset and frustrated because it slows them down while trying to get to work. Sometimes this can also lead to people speeding, which can cause terrible accidents. This is why I think we should design and build our roads to become a better standard, improving the quality and driving experience of citizens. Better quality roads will make our community safer and happier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to the rising cost of living. These increasing costs mean some families might not be able to attend extracurricular activities such as sport, art, music and dance. Lack of healthcare is another problem families suffer from, such as dental, medications and procedures. Families could have a hard time buying nutritious food. Poor diet can affect health and school performance and increase the need for healthcare and extra school support. Grades will also affect their life choices. I wanted to bring this to you today because the rising cost of living could mean less opportunities for our youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Jardine.
Today I would like to share with the House my concerns around bushfires. This speech brings attention to the issue of and reminds you about bushfires, especially the animals that are in danger, in particular koalas. The cute koalas are almost extinct because of how many bushfires are happening. It is important to note that koalas need trees and homes to survive, just like how we need oxygen to survive. I recommend a bushfire management plan that tells people what to do when there is a fire, but also teaches everyone how to prevent fires. This would then help all the animals from becoming extinct. So I encourage you to please help the critically endangered animals by educating all our local communities about bushfires. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the House do now adjourn. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against no. I think the ayes have it. Honourable youth members, I declare that the Gladstone Youth Parliament is closed.
I would like to thank you for the time you have spent with us today. Students, can we have a hear for Mr. Speaker? Yeah.